Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was on Fry Station when it started, and for a long time after that I kept thinking about how normal the first 10 minutes were. If you've ever worked overnights in a 24-hour fast food place off an interstate, you know the rhythm. It is not busy in the way lunch is busy. It comes in waves. A family van at 11:30. 2 rideshare drivers at midnight. A cluster of warehouse guys at 1:15. Truckers, road crews, college kids, people who should have gone home hours ago. Then dead quiet for 20 minutes while the exhaust fans hum and the heat lamps dry everything out, and somebody in the lobby stares at their phone like they forgot where they were going. I was 26, working nights at a burger place off Interstate 70 on the west side of Indianapolis, near one of those exits where you get a gas station, 2 chain hotels, a truck parking lot, and a strip of businesses that all look temporary even when they have been there for 20 years. I was on Fry Station because I was fast. I did not panic when we got slammed, and because hot oil and timing charts make sense to me in a way people usually do not. My name is Jamal Price. At that point, I had been there 11 months, mostly overnights, mostly by choice because night shift paid a little more and I could help my mother during the day. The store sat just off the ramp, visible from the frontage road, red sign lit up all night. Our manager that night was Carla Mendoza. 42, serious, practical, the kind of manager who knew the exact count of large lids in the stockroom without looking. On grill, we had Hector Ruiz, who had worked in restaurant kitchens for years before taking a steadier schedule with us. Up front, we had Maddie, a 19-year-old community college student who could take orders, cash people out, fill drinks, and restock sauces at the same time without looking stressed. In drive-thru, we had Troy, who talked too much but had perfect order recall. In the back doing dishes and trash runs was a high school kid named Eli who had no business being that calm around industrial sinks and chemical bottles but somehow was. It was a Thursday night leaning into Friday morning. Early spring, cool outside, no storms. I remember because our front windows were clear, not fogged, and you could see headlights coming off the interstate before they turned into the lot. At around 12:38 a.m., we got the first sign that the night was going wrong, and even then it looked like ordinary interstate trouble. A white crossover came in too fast, cut across 2 parking spaces, and stopped crooked near the front doors. Passenger side door opened before the vehicle stopped rolling. A woman got out first, yelling, but the sound did not register as words through the glass. Then a man climbed out from the back seat and his shirt looked dark and wet at the shoulder. Maddie glanced up from the counter and said, "Car crash," like she was just narrating weather. Carla stepped out from the office area and moved toward the lobby. We all saw the same thing at once. Another car pulled in behind them, then another, and a pickup from the ramp shoulder came through the lot entrance too fast and clipped the curb hard enough to throw sparks. The front doors opened, and the first woman ran in screaming, "Lock it, lock it, lock it, they're biting people, lock the door." I was still dropping fries. I remember the basket timer beeping. My hands were moving on habit while my brain lagged half a step behind what my eyes were seeing. The man with the dark shirt came in behind her, stumbling and grabbing tables. 2 more people forced through the doors at the same time, and one of them had blood down his face from a forehead cut. The kind you get from a windshield or side glass. That part made sense. Crash on the ramp. People hurt, people panicking. Then the words started making less sense. They're attacking cars. He jumped through the window. Don't let him in. She bit my husband. Maddie backed away from the counter, both hands up, trying to get people to slow down. Carla shouted, "Everyone back from the doors, back up. Let me see what's going on." Through the windows, I could see headlights piling on the ramp shoulder. Cars were stopped where they should have been moving. A few people were in the roadway, not walking, not running exactly, more like drifting and then lunging when someone got close. I remember one person beating on the side of a sedan with both hands while the driver tried to pull forward. Even then, if you asked me in that exact minute what I thought was happening, I would have said drugs, crash injuries, mass panic, maybe a fight spilled from one vehicle to another. I would not have said outbreak. Nobody sane says that first. Carla hit the lock on the front doors from the panel behind the counter. She told Maddie to call 911 and told Troy to stop taking drive-through orders until we understood what was happening. Troy had his headset half off, asking me, "Do you see this? Dude, do you see this?" Then the drive-through lane filled. Our restaurant looped around the building in a tight lane with a menu board and speaker on one side and a payment window and pickup window on the other. In 10 or 15 seconds, it went from one sedan waiting at the speaker to 6 vehicles stacked all the way around the corner. Horns, headlights, engines revving, people shouting. One driver started laying on the horn and never stopped. The headset speaker crackled with overlapping voices because Troy still had the system live. "Please, just let us through. Are you open? Open the window. They're behind us. I have kids in here." Carla looked from the front lobby to the drive-through monitor and made the same decision I think most managers would make in that moment. Secure the building first, then deal with one point of contact. She told Troy to shut the drive-through window, lock it, and step back. She told Hector to cut the grill down to standby and kill any equipment not needed. She told me to keep hot holding trays loaded but stop dropping anything until we knew if the power was stable. It sounds ridiculous to say those things mattered while the world was shifting outside, but those early choices bought us time because they kept the backline organized. Maddie was on 911, and her face had changed. She looked like she was trying to understand instructions that made no sense. "Yes, ma'am. I understand. But there are injured people here. No, I can't tell if they're... No, they're saying biting. Yes, actually biting. No, I don't know if it's an animal. It's people." One of the crash victims in the lobby, a man in a business shirt with a torn sleeve, sat down hard on the floor and started breathing in short, fast pulls. The woman with him said he had been bitten on the forearm. Carla told her to keep pressure on it with clean towels, and Hector grabbed first aid from under the hand-washing sink. We were not trained for major trauma, but every restaurant has a kit, gloves, and basic sanitation supplies. We moved on autopilot. Then the first person hit the glass. The sound was a heavy thud, shoulder first, against the front window near the soda machine area. Everyone in the lobby screamed and ducked. The person outside slid down, then pushed back up again with both hands on the glass and hit it a second time. Not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to spider a crack in the outer layer. He looked like a man in his 30s, work jacket, one shoe missing, face smeared with blood that might have been his or somebody else's. His eyes were open, but wrong somehow, not vacant exactly, more like over-focused on movement and nothing else. He saw the people inside and started pounding. That was the moment my brain stopped trying to fit the situation into a normal category. Carla shouted, "Everyone away from the windows, back now." The lobby customers who had already made it in rushed toward the rear hall that led to the restrooms and the employee area. The dining room became a crush of chairs, bags, spilled drinks, and bodies pushing in different directions. Somebody fell. Somebody else stepped on a backpack trying to pull a kid along by the arm. Maddie left the phone on speaker on the counter and jumped the service gate instead of going around, which I had never seen her do. The dispatcher on the phone was saying very clearly and too calmly, "If you can secure the interior, secure the interior. Do not open doors for additional persons if doing so creates immediate danger. Units are delayed. Delayed. That word sits in my head even now. Troy came off drive-through pale and sweating. They're banging on the pickup window. One guy's trying to climb over the hood of another car. I locked it. Carla made the call that saved me and maybe all of us in the first hour. She said, "Back of house, everybody, now." We sealed the rear corridor. Our building layout mattered. People who do not work in fast food think it is one room with a kitchen attached. It is more like a tight machine. Front counter and lobby, line stations, grill and fryers, prep area, dry storage, walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, dish pit, manager office, rear exit, utility closets, and a narrow service corridor connecting the back to the side hall. The freezer corridor was the best choke point because it was narrow, had a heavy steel fire door on one end, and shelving and carts nearby we could move past. We pulled back through the kitchen while the lobby noise got louder. Not just screaming now. Glass tapping, metal hits, horns, people yelling at each other outside, and underneath it all, the steady hum of our own equipment, like the building itself did not care. Carla shoved a speed rack across one side of the corridor entrance. Hector and I dragged a rolling ingredient cart and 2 boxes of frozen product to wedge the other side. Eli and Troy shoved a trash barrel filled with bagged waste into the gap and then jammed mop buckets under the wheels to stop it rolling back. It was ugly and improvised, but in a narrow space you do not need perfect. You need mass and friction. There were 12 of us behind that barricade by the time we finished counting. The 5 employees and 7 people from the lobby who had made it to the back. A married couple in their 50s from Ohio towing a camper. The woman from the white crossover and the man with the arm bite. A truck driver named Russ with a split lip and no jacket. A hotel desk clerk from across the frontage road named Priya who had run over from her property when guests start fighting in the parking lot. And 2 kids, maybe 8 and 11, with their aunt, all of them shaking so hard they could barely talk. We checked the rear exit, still secure. Carla locked it and pocketed the key. Then we heard pounding at the lobby side service door. The inner kitchen door rattled in its frame. Not all at once. Not a coordinated push, random impacts, then scratching, then hard hits again. People on the other side may be desperate, may be injured, may be no longer thinking. We did not know which. That uncertainty was the worst part for the first few hours. If it had all been obvious monsters, your brain would file the fear differently. Instead, it felt like being trapped between 2 kinds of danger and not knowing which one you were hearing. Maddie was crying quietly but still useful, which I respected more than people who act brave for show. She found flashlights in the office supply cabinet and started handing them out. Hector pulled clean aprons and towels for makeshift bandages. Priya said she had first aid training from hotel safety certification and took over the injured man's arm dressing with better technique than the rest of us. She irrigated with bottled water, used gauze, compression wrap, and told him to keep the limb elevated. The bite marks were clear. Human dental pattern. Deep enough to matter. Russ kept saying, "It's gotta be drugs." And then, "I've seen people on meth do crazy stuff, like repeating it could make it true again." Carla tested the back office landline. Dead. Maddie's cell had signal but calls were failing. Texts went through sometimes. Mine had 1 bar, then none, then one again. I texted my mother and my younger sister the same message 3 times because I did not know which would send. At work. We are locked inside, stay home, lock doors. Do not open for anyone unless you know them. Only one of those messages showed delivered. The next hour was noise, heat, and decisions. We shut off lobby music because hearing upbeat background tracks while people pounded on windows was making everyone jumpy. Hector and I started consolidating food and water because if this was going to last more than a few hours, Inventory became survival, not sales. We had potable tap water as long as municipal service stayed on, plus bottled water cases in dry storage. Food was not the problem short term. We had buns, frozen fries, patties, nuggets, breakfast stock, condiments, produce in the cooler, and enough dry goods for a day or two even if we fed everybody. Power was the big variable. As long as refrigeration held and lights stayed on, the building was a fortress compared to what was outside. If power failed, and alarms, exterior lights, and refrigeration dropped, it became a trap. Carla moved everyone into a rough system because she knew chaos kills faster than hunger. Quiet corner and prep area for the kids. Injury station at a stainless table by the hand sink. One person on observation at a time using the tiny office camera monitor that still showed the front counter and lobby. One person listening to local radio if we could get a signal. No one opens any door without Carla saying so. If someone panics, they sit down and breathe before talking. I liked her before that night. After that night, I understood what competence under pressure really looks like. The camera feed was grainy and on a few seconds delay, but it gave us enough. At first, we saw the lobby mostly empty except for chairs turned over and one of our floor caution signs lying flat near the drink station. Then figures started moving through the frame. Some were clearly customers or stranded drivers trying the doors and windows. Others moved in a way I can only call hunting. Fast bursts when they spotted motion. Erratic turns. Repeated impacts at the locked entrance. One person slipped on a spilled drink and got swarmed in a knot of bodies near the vestibule. We could not see details. I am grateful for that. At around 1:40 a.m., the local AM station cut in with emergency messaging between fragments of regular programming. Not a full explanation. Just repeated instructions to shelter in place if secure. Avoid contact with aggressive individuals and do not approach the injured unless necessary. State police were responding to multiple incidents on major routes around Indianapolis and beyond. Multiple incidents sounded bureaucratic and insane at the same time. Someone asked if the National Guard was coming. Nobody answered. The man with the arm bite, whose name was Dennis, started shivering around 2:10 a.m. Priya took his temperature with one of those cheap forehead strips from the first aid kit, then with a digital food thermometer cleaned and bagged because it was all we had. Not ideal, but accurate enough. He was running a fever. He said he felt cold and thirsty. His wife, Linda, kept insisting it was shock and blood loss. She might have been right. It might also have been the bite. We had no way to know, and no one wanted to say the second possibility out loud. Hector and I armed ourselves with kitchen tools because weapon sounds dramatic until you are in a fast food backline and look around at what actually exists. We had long-handled fryer skimmers, a heavy squeegee scraper for the flat top, aluminum sheet pans, mop handles, box cutters, and one steel pry bar from the maintenance cabinet used to open stuck pallet straps. Carla hated that I took the pry bar at first because she did not want anyone escalating if a scared civilian got through a door. I told her if somebody came through that corridor trying to bite, I was not fighting them with a spatula. She stared at me 2 seconds, then said, "Take gloves." That sentence feels funny now, but she meant cut gloves and heat gloves. Practical all the way down. By 3 a.m., the outside noise changed. Fewer horns, more distance, more isolated shouting. At some point, most of the cars in the drive-through lane had stopped moving entirely. Either abandoned, disabled, or blocked in. The monitor showed headlights pointed at weird angles, driver doors open, one SUV with both rear doors wide like someone had pulled kids out in a hurry. Our sign still glowed red over all of it. We started talking seriously about whether to stay or leave. The argument split along exactly the line you would expect. Stay Camp said we had steel doors, power, water, food, and walls. Go Camp said all those same things made us a beacon. The building sat on an interstate exit where every frightened person with half a tank and a family in the car would think the same thought. Restaurant equals lights, water, bathrooms, maybe help. If roads clogged and things got worse, this place would become a magnet. I was on stay camp until I looked at the monitor and realized we were already at target and had been for hours. The issue was not just infected people, it was everybody else. Every stranded driver, every person fleeing the road, every group looking for supplies. If they were calm, we could maybe organize. If they were desperate, one cracked window or forced door and the whole building turned into a crush point. We did not have enough secure rooms to separate people. We did not have medical supplies for more injuries. We did not know how long police response would stay delayed. Carla asked for votes, but then ignored the idea of a pure vote, which again was smart. The kids and injured could not just vote to make a dangerous move. Instead, she asked for capabilities. Who can drive? Who knows local roads? Who has family nearby? Who has medical training? Who can physically move barriers and carry supplies? Who is too hurt to travel? That turned the conversation from panic to logistics. I knew the area well. I lived east of there, but I had worked delivery jobs before this and knew service roads, industrial parks, and a couple of ways to avoid the interstate if it was blocked. Priya knew the hotel across the road, including which guests had checked in and which maintenance closets had tools and linens. Russ had a tractor trailer parked at a truck stop 2 exits west, but no way to get there safely on foot if the frontage roads were bad. Hector lived 20 minutes south and had a wife and son at home. Carla lived 10 minutes away, but on surface streets through a commercial strip that would likely be crowded. Then Dennis vomited and tried to stand up swinging. Not fully transformed, I hate that word anyway. He was still Dennis for a second, maybe in pain, maybe delirious, maybe reacting to fever. But the way he lunged at Priya was not confused flailing. It was targeted. He grabbed for her face and neck. Hector and I hit him from the side at the same time, me with a sheet pan like a shield and Hector with a mop handle across the shoulders. Linda screamed at us to stop. Dennis turned and bit down on the edge of my cut glove hard enough that I felt the pressure through the fabric and almost lost my balance. I drove the sheet pan into his chest and Hector hooked his legs. Russ piled on from behind. We got him to the floor. No one in that room had any illusions after that. Carla took over in a voice I had never heard from her before, low and flat. Tie his wrists. Separate him. Linda, move back now. Linda fought us harder than Dennis did. Not physically stronger, just emotionally impossible. She kept saying he was sick, he was in shock, he needed a hospital. Every word was true in a world that no longer existed. Priya got her away while Maddie sobbed into both hands, and Eli stared at the floor so hard I thought he was going to faint. We used extension cords and apron ties to secure Dennis to a steel prep table base in the side prep area, far from the kids and the corridor. It was awful. It was also the only way to keep everyone alive if he went after someone again. We left him on his side so he could breathe and not choke if he vomited. We gave Linda a chair nearby but outside arm's reach. Carla told everyone no one approaches him alone. By 4:15 a.m., the debate about leaving was over. We were not a shelter anymore. We were a choke point with a timer running. The problem was how. Front doors were out. Drive-through lane was clogged. Unknown numbers outside. Rear exit opened into a narrow service alley behind the building with dumpster enclosure, grease bin, and a short access drive that connected to the lot behind the hotel and gas station properties. Better than the front, but only if not watched or blocked. We had no camera coverage back there. I volunteered to recon because I was the lightest on my feet and because I had worked enough trash runs at night to know the sounds and blind corners behind the building. Hector said he was coming with me. Carla said no at first, then changed it to yes if we did it her way. Crack the rear door 1 inch, listen, smell, observe through the gap. No full opening without confirmation. It sounds silly to say smell, but by then we had noticed something outside the front whenever the HVAC pulled in air from the lobby side. Hot engines, spilled gasoline, burned rubber, and that metallic body fluid smell from injuries. If the alley smelled like that, it meant recent activity. At 4:32 a.m., with everybody silent and lights dimmed in back, Carla unlocked the rear exit while Hector and I braced on either side. She opened it to the safety latch. Cool air came in. Damp asphalt. Dumpster smell. Grease. No voices. No footfalls. No immediate movement. We waited a full minute. I eased my eye to the gap. Alley was dark but visible under a wall pack light that was somehow still on. Dumpster enclosure closed. No one at the back step. No bodies. No cars. The access drive beyond was empty from what little angle I had. We shut it again and planned fast. The biggest mistake people make under pressure is trying to move everything. We did not. We planned one push, one loadout, essentials only. Water, high-calorie food, flashlights, batteries, first aid, blankets, phone chargers, cash from our own pockets, and any personal meds. No one was carrying restaurant inventory like frozen cases or bulk oil. Too heavy, too slow. We each got a bag or improvised bundle. Kids got backpack space for water and soft items, not weight. Weapons, if you want to call them that, were practical tools only. I kept the pry bar and a fryer skimmer because the long handle gave distance. Hector took a mop handle cut shorter with a serrated bread knife and taped grip. Russ carried a fire extinguisher, which I thought was excessive until later. Carla had the ring of keys, a flashlight, and one of the heavy metal cash drawers emptied of cash but still useful as a shield. Priya carried medical supplies and stayed with the kids and Linda. Troy and Eli hauled water. Where to go was the next fight. Nobody had enough fuel, certainty, road certainty, or confidence to make a highway run before daylight. Carla suggested the hotel behind us first as a temporary move because it had lockable rooms, linens, more water, and maybe radios. Priya said the hotel was likely compromised already because she had seen guests fighting and people coming in from the road. She suggested the maintenance annex at the far end of the lot. Small, cinder block, exterior lock, no public access, houses laundry overflow and utility controls. Fewer windows. Less obvious than the main building. That became Phase 1. Get out of restaurant. Cross service lane. Reach maintenance annex. Reassess at daylight. At 5:03 a.m., just before first light started making the sky gray over the roofline, we moved. Carla opened the rear exit fully. Hector and I went out first, checked left and right, then signaled. The rest came in file. The alley was slick near the grease bin, and Eli almost slipped, but Russ caught him by the backpack strap before he hit the ground. We cleared the dumpster enclosure corner and cut across the narrow drive behind the hotel. Every noise sounded too loud. Plastic bottles knocking in bags, shoes scraping, Linda breathing hard, the kids whispering and being hushed. Halfway across, we heard shouting from the front lot. Human voices, not close, but enough to make everyone crouch instinctively. We reached the maintenance annex door. Locked. Priya had a key ring from the hotel clipped inside her hoodie pocket. First key wrong, second wrong, third stuck, fourth opened. We piled in and shut the door behind us. The annex was maybe 12 by 20 feet, concrete floor, metal shelving, laundry carts, linen bundles, a utility sink, breaker panels, and the smell of detergent and dust. One high-wired window, no public signage. It was not comfortable, it was defensible. For the first time in hours, I let myself think we might actually live through the morning. Then Troy said, "Jamal, your arm." My right forearm was wet. For one clean second, my stomach dropped because all I could think was bite. Then I looked and saw it was a shallow cut where the edge of the sheet pan had sliced me when we took Dennis down. Not teeth. A straight line. Bleeding, but not deep. Priya cleaned and wrapped it anyway while I sat on an upside-down laundry crate trying not to shake. Sunrise showed us what the night had done to the exit. From the annex window and later from a crack in the side door, we could see enough of the hotel lot and part of the frontage road to piece together the pattern. Wrecks on the ramp had blocked outbound traffic. Drivers trying to bypass piled into the service roads. Some abandoned cars when they got trapped. Others tried to push through medians and curbs. People ran toward any lit business. Some were injured. Some were aggressive in ways that spread panic and injury fast. Once enough fear built, every crowding point became dangerous on its own, even without the infected. The restaurant, gas station, and hotel all became magnets. The gas station canopy lights were off by around 6:20 a.m., either power issue or shut-off. Our restaurant still had lights, but the parking lot was full of stalled vehicles and moving figures. I counted at least 3 people trying to force the front doors with something long, maybe a tire iron, maybe a jack handle. Could have been trying to get inside from the infected. Could have been trying to loot. By then, the motive barely mattered. The building we had left was no longer survivable. We stayed in the annex most of the morning, rotating watch and listening to radio. Information came in fragments. Aggressive incidents in multiple counties. Hospitals overwhelmed. State emergency declaration. Law enforcement advising citizens to avoid travel unless absolutely necessary. Rumors mixed with facts within minutes. People said the National Guard had roadblocks up. People said downtown was under evacuation. People said the water was contaminated. Most of that turned out to be wrong or partly wrong, but when you are trapped with one radio and weak signal, rumor feels like weather. Hector finally reached his wife by text around 7:10 a.m. She was home with their son and had locked the apartment. That was the first good news any of us got. Carla got a single text from her brother. Do not come on main roads. Stay hidden. I still had no response from my family, and I kept checking signal every 10 minutes like staring at the screen would force the towers to work. Around 8 a.m., the first serious human threat found us. We heard the annex door handle turn once, then again harder. Everyone froze. Russ lifted the extinguisher. Hector and I took positions on either side. Carla motioned for silence. A man's voice outside said, "Hello, maintenance, anybody in there? We need supplies." Another voice, younger, said, "I saw someone come back here." Carla mouthed, "Don't answer." The first man tried the handle again and then hit the door with an open palm. "We're not here to hurt anybody, we just need water." That may have been true. The problem was, if we opened for 2, 6 might rush the door behind them. Or one panicked person could scream and bring everything in the lot our way. Carla asked quietly, "How many?" No one knew. The younger voice changed tone fast. "I know you're in there." Then metal scraped against the door, like they were trying to pry with something flat. Russ whispered, "I got it," raising the extinguisher, and Carla gave him the look that meant if that door comes open, yes. What saved us was not strength. It was noise from the hotel side, shouting. A crash of glass. The men at our door stopped prying and ran. We heard their footsteps fade across the lot. That was when the group finally understood the second part of the hook I had not grasped during the night. Resources attract attention, but hidden resources attract investigation. The annex had bought us concealment for a few hours, not safety. By late morning, we needed a bigger plan. Priya knew the hotel layout, but not how many people were inside now. Russ wanted to make a run for his truck stop, arguing a tractor cab was steel, elevated, and had fuel if he could reach it. Carla wanted to get the kids and injured to a residential area off the commercial strip, somewhere with fewer random people and more doors that locked. Hector wanted to go south toward his family immediately. Linda refused to leave without Dennis, who was still back at the restaurant and by then almost certainly unreachable. That last fact sat in the room like a weight. Carla tried to explain gently that going back through the lot to retrieve him would likely kill all of us. Linda said if we left him there, we were killing him ourselves. No one had words for that. I kept thinking about my mother and sister on the east side, and every minute spent in that cinderblock room felt like betrayal. But every time I imagined trying to cross Indianapolis in broad daylight with roads failing, I saw us getting trapped in the same kind of choke point all over again. So I suggested something nobody liked, but everybody could work with. Move in stages using back corridors and service roads, not highways, and split only when we had a safer launching point. The nearest viable launching point I knew was an older self-storage property about 1.5 miles away behind a row of warehouses, accessible by frontage road, a drainage access, and a broken chain link section I had used years earlier when helping a cousin move after hours. Why self-storage? High fences, roll-up units, limited entry points, and potential for temporary shelter if the office was abandoned. Not ideal. Better than an annex with one door and no water supply except a utility sink. Carla listened, asked 3 practical questions: route, obstacles, and why not houses instead, and then nodded. We moved before noon. Heat and visibility get worse later. We staged again, tighter this time. Leave non-essential weight. Refill water. Wrap shoes with towels and tape for anyone in hard soles that made too much noise on pavement. Priya improvised better padding for the kids' feet because one was in sandals. Hector found a coil of nylon rope and cut lengths in case we needed to tie a door shut behind us. Eli grabbed hotel maintenance gloves and handed them out like he had been born for emergencies. Troy finally stopped talking altogether, which in his case meant he was scared enough to focus. At 11:17 a.m., we exited the annex through the side service door, not the main lot side, and moved along the back wall toward the drainage ditch that ran behind the commercial strip. The ditch was concrete-lined in sections, grassy in others, with trash, runoff smell, and enough cover from grade changes to keep us below line of sight from the road. It also meant slower movement and dirty footing, but hidden beats fast when crowds are breaking down. We made maybe 400 yards before the first close contact. 2 people appeared on the embankment ahead, a man and a woman, both in office clothes, both moving unsteadily. The man spotted us and slid halfway down the slope too fast, falling and scrambling up again. He shouted something I could not make out. Russ raised the extinguisher. Carla shouted back, "Stop there. We can't help you if you rush us." The woman looked normal enough from a distance until she turned her head, and I saw she had dried blood all over her jaw and neck. She started down the slope without using her hands, almost stumbling, then accelerating when the kids made noise. Everything happened in seconds. I stepped forward with the skimmer handle out, not to strike but to keep distance. Hector moved left to block the line to the kids. Carla shouted again to stop. The man froze. The woman did not. She reached for Hector's arm, mouth open, and he shoved her back with the mop handle. She came again. Russ discharged the fire extinguisher right into her face. The white cloud hit all of us downwind, chemical dust and cold blast. I coughed so hard my eyes watered. But it stopped her, and it stopped the man too. He started yelling, blind, and slid backward on the grass. Carla used the moment perfectly. "Move! Move now!" We passed them at a wide angle while they were disoriented, and I remember hating how relieved I felt. Not because they were hurt, because we had not had to go hand to hand. That was the first time I realized survival was going to be a chain of ugly choices, not one heroic decision. The storage property was harder to reach than I remembered because a section of fence line behind the warehouses had been repaired. We lost 20 minutes circling and nearly got pinned between a loading dock and a line of parked trailers when a group of people came running down the service road behind us. Some may have been fleeing. Some may have been chasing. We did not stay to classify them. Eli, of all people, found the alternate access. He spotted a storm drain service gate half off its hinges where the ditch widened behind the storage lot. We squeezed through one at a time, scraping bags and sleeves on rusted wire. Inside the perimeter, the place was mostly quiet. Rows of one-story units, chain-link fencing with slats, office at the front gate, and a manager apartment above or behind it. I could not tell from our angle. A few unit doors stood open. One pickup sat idling near the office with the driver door open and no driver in sight. Quiet in a place like that is never comforting. We moved down the first row and chose a unit near the middle with a bent lock hasp and door half open, empty except for broken shelving and a plastic tote. Concrete floor, no windows, no power. We used it as a temporary hide and observation point, while Carla, Priya, Hector, and I crawled to the row end to look toward the office. There were bodies near the gate. I am keeping that general on purpose, 2 not moving, 1 moving in circles inside the fence line like he had forgotten what gateposts were for. The pickup still idled. The office door hung open. Priya whispered that if the office generator was running, there might be radio, keys, water, maybe maps. Carla said 2 exposed. Hector said if we stayed in empty units with no water source, we would be moving again by evening anyway. I said the pickup was our best chance to get the kids and slower adults farther out if the keys were in it. We argued in whispers while heat built in the concrete rows and the engine kept running out front. In the end, Carla split the task. A small team to secure the pickup and office if possible. Everyone else holds in the unit, door mostly down, no noise. If we are not back in 15 minutes, they move to the far fence line and wait. It was not a perfect plan. It was a plan with time limits, which made it better than panic. I went with Hector and Russ. Carla stayed to manage the group. Priya wanted to come, but Carla kept her with the kids and Linda. We moved row to row, using corners and roll-up doors as cover. The person circling near the gate turned toward us once but got distracted by engine noise. Up close, I could see the pickup was a maintenance truck from the storage property. Keys in ignition, tank just above half. Bed full of tools, cones, and a bolt cutter. Russ grinned for the first time all day and mouthed, "We are in business." Then the office doorway moved. A woman in a storage company polo shirt stepped out holding a revolver in both hands, arms shaking. "Don't come closer." We all froze. Russ had the extinguisher in one hand and looked ridiculous and dangerous at the same time. I put my left hand up slowly and said, "We've got kids. We're not here to hurt you. We need a vehicle and water." She looked past us, scanning for more. "How many?" 12, I said. 1 injured adult, 2 children. Her face changed the way Carla's had earlier, calculating, not softening. "I have maybe 10 gallons in jugs and first aid. Radio's dead, cell spotty, gates jammed. If you start this truck and drive it loud, you'll pull everything on the frontage road." She was right. Also, leaving the truck idling there was doing the same thing. Her name was Sharon Bell, 58, property manager, former Army medic according to the old tattoos on her forearm and the way she handled the gun. She had been on site in the apartment when things went bad at dawn, came down to the office to lock the gate, and got trapped when 2 customers and one of her renters turned aggressive. She had already learned what bites did, and she had no patience for denial. We cut the engine first. The sudden silence felt huge. Then we cleared the nearest moving threat by distraction instead of direct contact. I tossed a metal cone down the opposite lane, and when the circling man moved toward the noise, Hector and Russ dragged one of the gated chain loops tighter to block the office approach. Sharon covered with the revolver but did not fire. Smart. Gunshots would have echoed across the whole strip. In the office, we found more useful stuff in 10 minutes than in the previous 6 hours. Bottled water, a trauma kit, duct tape, local paper maps, 2 handheld radios with a short range, flashlights and a battery lantern. No miracle, no military cache, just competent property management supplies. Sharon had also locked herself in with snack food and knew every blind angle of the lot. Carla brought the group forward in 2 waves. Linda nearly collapsed when she saw the office chairs and air conditioning, and only then did we realize how overheated everyone had gotten. The kids drank too fast and Priya had to make them slow down. For the first time since the restaurant, we had an actual secure building room with a lock, water, and more than one adult who could think under pressure. That changed everything. We spent the rest of Friday fortifying the storage office and part of the row nearest it. I know that sounds impossible, but survival is often boring work done while scared. We used the bolt cutter and tools from the maintenance truck to chain 2 internal gates, moved vehicles to create barriers without blocking our own path, and marked quiet routes between the office, manager apartment stairs, and selected empty units. Sharon knew which units were vacant from the paper ledger. We chose 3, one for supplies, one for resting, one as fallback if the office was breached. Hector and I rigged a simple noise alert on the back office door using metal tags and wire. Eli and Troy hauled water and sorted food like seasoned warehouse hands. Priya turned the break room corner into a real treatment area. Carla made a roster and watch schedule on a clipboard with a grease pencil because pens kept disappearing. Russ, once he settled down, proved useful with locks and improvised barriers. Even Linda found a job, folding linens and organizing bandages because people break if they're left with grief and nothing to do. By evening, Sharon and Carla were discussing hold versus move like they had worked together for years. I still wanted to reach my family. That need never went away. But now there was a difference between leaving out of panic and leaving with a route, vehicle, and daylight plan. Sharon had maps. I knew surface streets. Carla could organize a convoy, even if our convoy was 1 maintenance pickup and 1 handcart. Around 6:30 p.m., I finally got a text from my sister. "We are home. Mom locked everything. Mr. Calderon next door with us. TV says stay inside. Where are you?" I sat on the office floor and cried so hard I had to put my forehead against the file cabinet to keep quiet. Not because we were safe, because they were alive at that moment, and I had proof. I texted back a long message in short bursts to improve delivery. "I'm alive. Off West Side near I-70, in secure place for now. Stay with neighbors. Keep doors locked. Fill tubs and containers with water now if still on. Keep phones charging. Do not go outside for anyone yelling." Only half of it showed sent. I sent the rest again. That first night at the storage office, we learned the pattern that would define the next few days. Afternoons brought movement on the frontage road. People searching, fleeing, sometimes fighting over vehicles or fuel. Nights brought quieter but more dangerous wandering near fences and gates, drawn by light, voices, or pure chance. The infected were not coordinated. Desperate people were, sometimes. We feared both for different reasons. At 11 p.m., a group of 4 men came to the front gate with flashlights and a crowbar. They saw the locked office lights low and started calling out for help. Sharon whispered, "Do not answer yet." One man said they had a woman in labor in a van. Another said they knew there was water inside. Russ muttered that it was a trick. Carla said maybe, maybe not, and hated that she had to hesitate. We watched from the dark office through the blinds. There was a van outside the gate. We could not see clearly into it. The men worked the gate chain and failed. One of them started hitting the padlock with the crowbar. That was enough. Sharon stood where they could hear but not see her and shouted, "Move away from the gate now. Area is unsafe. Go east to County Fire Station." That last part was a guess and maybe a lie. I still do not know if it helped them or sent them into more danger. They cursed, threatened, and eventually left when movement in the road behind them spooked the whole group. We heard screaming, maybe 5 minutes later from farther down the frontage road, and then nothing clear. Linda covered the kids' ears. Maddie went into the bathroom and threw up. Nobody slept much. Saturday morning, we made the first real long-term decision. The group was too big and too mixed to move all together through Indianapolis safely. We needed to split by destination and capability. Carla hated it. I hated it. But keeping 12 people together because it felt morally cleaner would have gotten people killed. The kids, their aunt, Linda, and Priya, could move with Sharon and Carla to a church campus Sharon knew in Plainfield where a cousin volunteered, and where there might be fenced grounds, kitchens, and more adults. Hector would take the maintenance truck south on side roads to reach his family if the path stayed open, then continue only if he could help others. Russ still intended to get to his tractor. Troy and Eli were local enough to aim for their own families with a pair plan. I would go east when I had the best chance, probably with Russ for at least the first leg, because 2 adults moved better than 1, and he knew trucks, fuel, and bypass routes. Before we split, we spent another full day improving odds. That is the part people skip in stories because it sounds dull, but it is why some of us made it through the first week. We filled every container we had while pressure still held in the storage office plumbing. We copied maps by hand in case phones died. We wrote names, family contacts, blood types if known, and intended routes on paper and sealed duplicates in plastic bags. Sharon taught us a quick trauma check routine and how to use pressure dressings properly. Priya labeled medicine by purpose and dosage in thick marker because panic makes people forget simple things. Hector stripped useful tools from the maintenance truck bed and redistributed them by likely need. Wrenches, duct tape, zip ties, work gloves, reflective vests for signaling, bolt cutters staying with Carla and Sharon. I used part of the afternoon to scout on foot to a better vantage point near the back fence and confirmed what I had suspected. Interstate traffic in both directions was effectively broken in stretches. Not every lane, not every mile, but enough wrecks and abandoned vehicles to make normal travel unreliable. Surface streets were ugly but moving in patches. That meant route flexibility mattered more than speed. The restaurant where this started was visible in the far distance if you climbed the manager apartment stairs and looked west between warehouse roofs. The sign was still lit by Saturday evening. The parking lot was a maze of cars. I stood there longer than I should have, thinking about stainless counters, fryer timers, the smell of oil, and the fact that a place built to serve food as fast as possible had turned into a siege point in less than an hour. I also thought about Dennis. I am not pretending I came to peace with that. I just ran out of time to stay angry at reality. We left the storage property in stages before dawn on Sunday. Carla's group went first in the maintenance truck with Sharon driving, Carla navigating, Priya in the back seat with the kids, Linda and the aunt in the rear bench fold-down area, and as much water and food as the suspension could handle without making the truck crawl. Hector rode shotgun for the first segment to help clear obstacles and then planned to split south at a rail crossing if it was open. We opened the inner gate, killed lights, and rolled the truck out by hand for the first 20 feet before starting the engine to keep noise down. That one detail, shoving a pickup in silence while your shoes slip on oil spots and your arms shake, felt like the whole new world in miniature. No drama, just work done quietly because noise brings trouble. They got out clean. Troy and Eli left next with bicycles we found in a unit where the renter had apparently never returned. One mountain bike, one hybrid, both dusty but usable after pumping tires and tightening brakes. They wore reflective vests turned inside out to dull the color and carried food in courier bags. Troy hugged me hard enough to bruise my shoulder and said, "If this goes back to normal, I am never working breakfast again." It was the first joke any of us laughed at in 2 days. Russ and I left last mid-morning, after watching the roads and waiting for a gap in movement. We took the maintenance truck only part way. The fuel mattered, but a marked property truck also screamed supplies to anyone watching. Plan was to use it to get east through the warehouse belt and industrial roads, then abandon it before entering denser neighborhoods and continue on foot or with another vehicle if opportunity came. Russ surprised me by becoming calmer once it was just the two of us. He had spent 2 days talking big and pacing. On the move, he turned into a trucker again, scanning mirrors, reading traffic patterns, conserving fuel, staying off obvious routes, treating every stopped car like a problem set instead of a random object. We passed scenes I still sort in my head by sound more than image. Car alarms dying one by one, distant sirens with no clear direction, barking dogs, generators running in neighborhoods where people had already figured out that power might fail next. We also passed people helping each other. That part matters. A church parking lot where volunteers were handing bottled water through a fence instead of opening the gate. A mechanic shop with welded chain across the bays and 3 men directing families into a side lot. Apartment residents dragging furniture to block a lobby entrance while someone on a balcony shouted what streets to avoid. The world was coming apart unevenly, and in the gaps people were improvising. Near an industrial park east of downtown, we hit our worst roadblock yet. Not infected, just a human bottleneck at a fuel station where a crowd had spilled into the street around pumps, cans, and one broken tanker. Russ backed us out before anyone boxed us in. "Fuel turns people stupid fast," he said, and I could not argue. We abandoned the truck around noon behind a closed auto parts warehouse after siphoning a few gallons into approved fuel cans we found in the bed and taking every portable tool and supply we could carry. Russ wanted to keep pushing north first to his tractor yard. I needed east. We stood in the shade of the loading dock and did the thing I had started to hate most. Split up from somebody I might never see again because both routes mattered. He gave me a folding road atlas from his jacket bag and said, "Stay off the heroic routes." I gave him one of Sharon's radios even though range was short and probably useless by distance. We shook hands and went opposite directions without making a speech out of it. By the time I reached the east side where my mother lived, it was after dark and I was moving like an old man. I am skipping hours of travel and close calls because this story started in a restaurant and I want to keep the center of it honest. But I will say this. Everything I survived between the fry station and my front door came down to skills I did not think counted as survival skills. Staying calm in heat, working in tight spaces, following checklists, cleaning cuts immediately, knowing where supplies are stored, listening to the most competent person in the room, not arguing with reality because you do not like it. When I got to my mother's duplex, the porch light was off and the windows were covered with blankets from inside. Mr. Calderon from next door opened the door with a hammer in one hand and cried when he saw me, then yelled for my mother and sister like I had come back from war. Maybe I had. We made it through the first week because of what started on that night shift. I taught our block how to harden doors with simple hardware and furniture placement because I had spent hours thinking about choke points and barricades in a freezer corridor. I taught rationing from inventory count habits. We built quiet routines, watch rotations, and cleaning protocols because fast food teaches process if you let it. I showed people how to move in narrow halls without bunching up because I had seen what a crush of bodies does inside a dining room. When we had to defend close quarters, I picked tools for distance and control, not noise and panic. Every boring thing from that job became useful. And I never forgot the hook that hit me in that restaurant and followed me everywhere after. Power, water, food, and light will keep you alive, but they will also bring every desperate person within sight if you do not control access and think ahead. A building is not safety just because it has supplies. It is safety if you can manage people, noise, entry points, and time. Years later, when people ask where I was when the outbreak started, they expect a dramatic answer. Highway pileup, hospital corridor, some big public scene. I tell them the truth. I was dropping fries at 12:38 in the morning while a basket timer beeped and a woman ran through the front doors yelling for us to lock them. Everything after that was just work, fear, and choices. I still remember the exact layout of that back corridor. Stainless prep table to the left, dry storage shelves on the right, freezer door farther in, mop sink beyond. We stacked a speed rack, a cart, a trash barrel, and whatever else had wheels and weight, and for a few hours that ugly barricade held against a world that had stopped making sense. I remember the heat from the fryers on my face while the front windows shook. I remember Carla counting people twice before she counted supplies. I remember Priya wrapping a bite wound with steady hands even when she knew what it might mean. I remember Hector saying, "Distance, always distance," as he cut a mop handle shorter for the corridor. I remember Maddie jumping the service gate because there was no time to walk around. I remember Eli finding the storm gate behind the warehouses when the rest of us were busy being scared. When I tell the story now for people who study those first days, I do not tell it as a legend. I tell it as a chain of practical details. A 24-hour restaurant near an interstate exit is an early convergence point in any mass panic because it offers light, bathrooms, calories, and the idea of help. Staff on overnight shift are usually undermanned but used to handling unpredictable customers. Back-of-house layouts can provide temporary compartmentalization if interior doors are solid and employees know the space. Improvised tools matter in close quarters. Water and power buy time, but visibility and access determine whether that time helps or hurts. Most of all, I tell them that the hardest calls were not about fighting. They were about people. Who comes inside when the doors are already shaking? Who gets the first bandages? When shelter in place stops being good advice because your shelter is now a landmark. When to leave someone you cannot safely save. When to split a group because staying together feels right, but moving together is slower and louder. How to say no to strangers at a gate when they might truly need help, and opening might doom the people already in your care. There is no training video for that. There should be, but there is not. If you worked nights in food service, retail, trucking, janitorial, hotel maintenance, hospital housekeeping, warehouse shipping, any job people call basic, you probably understand this better than most. You spend your shifts solving small problems in real time with limited staff, limited tools, and people who are tired, hungry, angry, drunk, hurt, or scared. That is what the first hours of the outbreak were, just amplified until the consequences stopped being a bad review or a workers' comp form and started being life and death. The night shift did not make me fearless. It made me useful while afraid. That is what kept me alive. For a long time after, the smell of hot fryer oil made my chest tighten. The beep of a kitchen timer could pull me back into that first half hour so fast my hands would start sweating. Even now, if I walk into a restaurant and see the rear corridor, I automatically map exits, heavy objects, and blind corners. Some habits are hard to turn off once they save you. I heard bits and pieces about the others over the following months, enough to know some endings and some continuations. Carla and Sharon made it to the church campus in Plainfield and helped run intake and kitchen logistics until the place was evacuated to a larger county shelter network. That did not surprise me at all. Give Carla clipboards, a storeroom, and a crisis, and she becomes center beam of a structure. Priya stayed with them for a while, then moved into medical support work because she had the temperament for triage and the patience to repeat instructions clearly to panicked people. I was told she saved more than one life just by recognizing dehydration and infection early in crowded shelters where everyone assumed every fever meant the same thing. Hector reached his family. I know that because 3 months in, a handwritten note came through a relay route. Real paper, folded into plastic, passed between groups trading information and supplies. He wrote that he made it south, that his wife was alive, that his son kept asking when Burger Uncle Jamal was visiting again because Hector had told him stories about our overnight shifts. I sat on a porch step and laughed at that name until I had to wipe my face. Troy and Eli both made it home the first week. Troy eventually started running message routes by bike because he was fast and impossible to keep quiet even after the world ended. Eli grew up in 6 months. Kids like that always do. I never learned for certain what happened to Russ. I got one radio burst weeks later on a scavenged handheld that might have been him, maybe from near a logistics yard, saying something about stuck rigs and using trailers as barriers. Could have been him. Could have been another trucker with the same voice shape in my memory. I hope it was him. I hope he found his tractor and turned it into a wall for people who needed one. Linda's story was the hardest to hear. She stayed with Carla's group for several days and then left to look for Dennis after reports of organized recovery teams moving through the West Side commercial strips. Whether she found what she was looking for, no one could tell me. I still think about her because grief and hope can make the same face, and in those first days, a lot of people were living on one while the other was tearing them apart. As for the restaurant itself, I saw it again months later during a controlled route through that corridor. The sign was dark by then. Windows boarded, front doors bent, lot overgrown in patches where cars had been cleared and others left where they died. The dining room looked smaller than I remembered. The back corridor looked exactly the same dimensions, just dirtier, as if the world had changed scale but not measurements. I stood there with a respirator, gloves, and a team behind me. And all I could see was that first barricade made of a speed rack and a trash barrel and frozen cases. Ugly. Improvised. Effective for the hours it needed to be. That is the truth of most survival in the beginning. Not bunkers and hero speeches. Not clean plans. Just ordinary people in work shoes using whatever is in reach, buying one more hour than another until they can move. I was working the night shift at a fast food restaurant when the outbreak started. I survived because we treated the kitchen like a machine, the hallway like a choke point, the supplies like inventory, and fear like another problem to manage. And when the building that kept us alive became the thing that would get us killed, we left before the whole highway figured out the same answer we did. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.